co-teachers and Fix-It enthusiasts. I'm going to show you Trinity Academy's way of using the IEW Fix-It curriculum. In this video, there will be 3 parts. First, I will systematically walk you through a lesson and day 1 of a worksheet. Second, I will approach day 2 as if I were a student, to give us a better idea of how the student works. And thirdly, I will show you the resources that are available to you. Timestamps will be provided, so feel free to use those. I will be using the Frog Prince book. Just note that there are different books that increase in reading level and the range of concepts covered. There are also newer workbooks, so the workbook that we are using today may look a little bit different than the workbook that you have if you purchased it recently. Each week's work begins with a lesson, has a passage that needs to be fixed, which is divided into 4 days of work. And to finish off the week, copy work where the student writes in cursive their fixed passage as it should be. Let's begin looking at week 8. This week's lesson is commas with NDAs, nouns of direct address, as well as hyphens. So you have it broken up into 2 different parts, and I'll begin by just reading through the lesson. Usually your teacher will be reading through the lesson and explaining it as they go in the classroom. But if you're doing this at home, might be what you as a parent or co-teacher would be doing. So commas with NDAs. Commas are needed to set off nouns of direct address, or NDAs. NDAs are usually names where someone is directly addressed by name or title. They show up anywhere in the sentence, beginning, middle, and end. So make sure that you engage the students' activities by asking them, where can an NDA appear? Beginning, middle, or end. And here are some examples. Dorinda, please be more careful when you traipse through the hallway. So what's the noun of direct address? Dorinda. Please make them note that Dorinda, the noun of direct address, will never be the subject of a sentence. Please be more careful when you traipse through the hall. That is the sentence. What is the subject? It's an understood you. Try to integrate in other concepts into the lesson as naturally as you can, but don't emphasize them. If you would permit me, madam, I should be honored to rescue your plaything. Note here that the NDA is in the middle of the sentence. And then, how is it you can talk, Mr. Frog? Here we have the NDA at the end of the sentence. Also note that it's always separated by a comma on all sides. Use the grammar cards if needed to help you with your NDAs. I will cover the grammar cards in the resource section at the end of the video. Next subject is going to be hyphens. Hyphens are often used in compound words and many numbers. Be sure to include them as needed. Here are the rules. Use hyphens in some compound nouns such as lady-in-waiting. Consult a dictionary to check whether the compound noun should be written as a 1-word, marksman, 2 words, apple tree, or a hyphenated word. This would be a good part to stop and ask the student questions, like, can you think of any compound words that are 1 word, that are 2 words, or that are hyphenated words? This way that they are actually engaging with the material and not simply letting the material flow over them. Next, use hyphens with compound adjectives in front of a noun, but usually not after a noun. For example, jewel-encrusted crown, 19th century author, well-attired people. But notice that we don't have the hyphen when we have her crown was jewel-encrusted. Jewel-encrusted defining crown. He lived in the 19th century. The people were well-attired. You could also give them a preview that these words here, these adjectives, are predicate adjectives. So predicate adjectives do not take the hyphen when used in a compound way. Use hyphens when compound numbers from 21 to 99. So students, when do you use hyphens with numbers? Between 21 and 99. And with spelled out fractions like 1/4. Also use hyphens in phone numbers such as 555, 1212 with a hyphen in between. So that is an example of how I go through the lesson with them every week. And it will be more elaborate when I'm in the classroom and I'm engaging with the students. But that is how each of the lessons go. To give you a preview, the grammar cards are going to be a summary of each of these concepts. So each concept that you go through is going to be covered with the grammar cards in the back, but we'll go through that later. Let's get into the day 1 of the lesson. So to begin the lesson out, I want to point out that all the concepts that the students are expected to know are labeled here at the top. You can use this sort of as a checklist as you go through, although I also provide a checklist for the students that they can actually check off as a separate piece of paper. So the question should be then, where do we begin? I advise the students to go through it in a very particular way. I advise them to start with prepositional phrases and then finding their subjects and verbs. So let's go through this together and find our prepositional phrases. Finding the prepositional phrases and subjects and verbs are important because the object of the preposition will never be the subject of a sentence, and this is a common point of confusion. So let's begin going through, and we're going to just take a second, and I'm going to mark up all of our subjects and our verbs here. And now I'm going to mark all of our prepositional phrases. As a note with this one, in order to mark my prepositional phrase, I have to solve this part of the problem, where I have to say which to do I want? The preposition to, the number to, or the adverb to. Here I want the preposition because voice is the object of our preposition. So I'll cross off these and circle this. And again, up here, I have to decide what I want to do. Is this the preposition to, the number to, or the adverb to? This is the preposition to here, but as a more advanced concept, we note that we don't have an object of the preposition here. We have instead an infinitive because rescue is acting as a verb here. So to plus verb equals infinitive, to plus noun equals prepositional phrase. Okay, and that is all of our prepositional phrases and nouns marked up in our lesson. So now that we have that marked up, our next part is we are going to bracket our main clauses and our dependent clauses and our adverbial clauses. That is one of the main things that this year in Fix-It we are focusing on. So let's go through and I will take a second and mark up all of those as they should be. So you'll notice that the adverbial clauses and all other dependent clauses have the rounded parentheses encircling them, and then the main clauses are labeled with the square brackets. And make sure to always label them as what they are. So AC is adverbial clause, MC is main clause. The reason why we do the subjects and verbs and main clauses first is because that is what's going to determine our punctuation in many cases. So now let's go through and take a look at our punctuation, see what we need to add and remove. We're also going to handle capitalization at this point in time because that's also going to be determined by our clauses and our punctuation. So to begin with, obviously, capitalize beginning of sentences. Offset your noun of direct address. And I'll go through the rest of them here. This little line here is how we tell when we need to remove a piece of punctuation. So we're pointing at our piece of punctuation and we're looping it out. Okay, let's review what we just did. We put in our quotation marks around our speaker. We make sure that we offset our speaker with our comma. We triple underlined words that need to be capitalized and removed any unnecessary punctuation. Oh, don't forget that period at the end. After that, we are going to designate new paragraphs and new sentence openers. Let's go ahead and do that. We only have 2 sentences in this day 1. So we label our first one as a number 5 opener, which means that it is an adverbial clause opener. And the second one is a number 1 opener, which means it is a subject opener, which means our subject comes without anything in before it. If you don't know what these openers are, I will go over in the resource section where you can find a list of these openers and explanations of what each one is. But the students should know this as they have gone over these in class. But if they don't, or if they need a reminder, look in that resource section. Now, one of the last things that your student is going to need to do is they're going to need to explain the vocabulary word. So in this case, we have the word throaty in bold. So the student's going to be expected to rewrite the word and provide a short definition. In this case, throaty means husky, hoarse, or guttural. Okay, that was a very clinical way to go through the content, and I had the advantage of double-checking my work against the teacher guide as I went. Now let's go through day 2 together without the help of the answer guide to better understand the real workflow of a student. And if I make a mistake, it's just a chance to learn. But let's begin by doing it the same way. We're going to try to find prepositional phrases and the subjects and verbs of a sentence. So let's read it through. A little flustered when she sighted no one, Dorinda inquired, "Pray tell, who has tendered such a thoughtful offer? Groomed in courtly speech, she could talk like a princess when convenient." Reading it through is always a great place to begin. You will automatically see a lot of the mistakes that need to be fixed, but let's go back to the beginning and go through it systematically. So we're looking for subjects and verbs. A little flustered, that is a beginning phrase. When she sighted no one, that is an adverbial clause. So we're going to have she sighted. Now I have to choose which one I want. Do I want cited, cited, or cited? The one that I want is going to be not like a citation and not as in like a building site, but as in cited, as in able to see. So we want the one in the middle here. So we're going to cross off the other ones and circle that one. And this is also our verb. So a little flustered when she sighted no one, Dorinda inquired. Okay, so we have a subject and we have a verb here. Pray tell. All right, so here it looks like we have you pray tell. Pray, I happen to know because I remember this from teaching before, is not our verb. This is our verb. Okay, so we're going to have, at least I think I remember. So our subject here is going to be an understood you, which we're going to put up in a bracket up here to show that we understand this. This is an imperative sentence. Understood you, subject you, verb tell. Who has tendered? Who is going to be our subject? Has tendered, that's going to be our verbs. Such a thoughtful offer. Groomed in courtly speech, introductory participle phrase. She could talk. So she is always going to be a subjective form of the pronouns. We know that we're dealing with a predicate nominative or a subject here. So she could talk. So helping verb, main verb. Like a princess when convenient. So this one's a little bit confusing, and this is going to be a great spot for you to go into the teacher guide and explain with your kid why this one is what it is. So this is actually an adverbial clause. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here and mark it. So we're going to mark this as an adverbial clause. So that when it was convenient is implied. So I'm going to just mark here, it was. So subject and verb. It was convenient. When it was convenient. That is our complete adverbial clause here. And we're just going to go ahead and mark that period at the end. There's nothing wrong with when you see a fix that needs to be made to just make it right then. So if you are making your capitalization fixes as you go through, there's nothing really wrong with that. All right, so now we should have all of our subjects and our verbs. Let's make sure that we have our prepositional phrases as well. A little flustered when she sighted no one, Dorinda inquired, who has tendered such a thoughtful offer? Groomed in courtly speech. In is preposition. So in what? In speech. In courtly speech. That is a prepositional phrase. She could talk like what? Like a princess. So that is a prepositional phrase as well. Okay, when it was convenient. So that is a prepositional phrase. That is a prepositional phrase. I think that's all of our prepositional phrases. So now we have to go to what is the next thing that we're going to be doing. Let's find our main clauses because that's going to allow us to see what our punctuation needs to be. So let's take a look. Clauses. A little flustered. When you are looking for dependent clauses, your student will have heard about the WW Asia words or the who, which clauses. You'll notice that in your dress-ups, when we talk about those are two things that we talk about a lot. So they should have memorized when, while, where, as, since, if, although, and because. That's your WWAsia.B words. So when, I see that we have a when, so we probably have an adverbial clause here. When she cited no one, and that's going to be a logical end. And they already have the period here in between our adverbial clause at the beginning of our sentence and our main clause. All right, so that's all good right there. Dorinda inquired. That's going to be who is saying it. So I think there needs to be a comma here in between the person saying it and what they actually said. So between the attribution and the quotation. So this is going to be a main clause here. Attribution is always there. So there needs to be a comma there. Pray tell. We already said that this is also a main clause here. You pray tell. Who has tendered such a thoughtful offer? This is also another main clause. Okay, and to be honest, I don't remember if we want to capitalize this or not after our colon here. I don't think we do. We're just going to leave it like it is for now. But we are going to mark our main clause and label it above, like we have. Who has tendered such a thoughtful offer? And we have a problem here. This is not an introductory dependent clause of who, which. This is an interrogative pronoun asking a question. So here, we have a question mark that we need to add at the end and mark that off as the ending of our main clause. Next sentence, groomed in courtly speech. This is a participle opener correctly with a comma after it. So our main clause is going to be right here because we have our subject and verb. Every time you have a subject and verb pairing, you have a clause of some kind, either main clause or dependent clause. This is a main clause. She could talk like a princess. End of the main clause, because then we have our adverbial clause there. I think that gives us all of our clauses. So now let's go through and look at our next step, which is going to be punctuation. Looks like they already have most of the punctuation correct here. A little flustered when she cited no one. Always add your punctuation at the end of all of your introductory phrases before your main clause. It's already there. Dorinda inquired. We put our comma here after our quotation, or after our attribution before our quotation. That is going to be this, we're going to leave that there. If your student doesn't know why this is here, this is an excellent time to go into the answer guide and look at why is this colon here? And usually there's going to be an explanation in the answer guide as to why this is why this odd piece of punctuation is what it is. Who has tendered such a thoughtful offer? All right, we fixed that punctuation. We already have our comma here after our beginning participle phrase. She could talk like a princess when convenient. Okay, I see a problem right here. We have an adverbial clause, but the adverbial clause is coming after the main clause. In this case, we don't need the comma because what the comma at the beginning here, in this case, is telling us is that this adverbial clause is actually part of our complete predicate. It doesn't belong at the beginning of the sentence. It really belongs at the end of the sentence because it is modifying our verb. So we need to offset it here with a comma to show that. But if our adverbial clause comes after our main clause, then it's right next to our verb, our predicate section over here. So we don't need to offset it with a comma. There are exceptions when it's a superfluous or unnecessary adverbial clause, but we're going to remove that one there. Okay, that should handle our punctuation. Now let's go into our next stage, which is going to be looking at when do we need a new paragraph. You need a new paragraph when one of four things happens. When you have a new topic, a new speaker, a new place, or a new time. So let's go through these and ask ourselves if we have one of those conditions. A little flustered when she cited no one. So we have to go back to our context here. What happened in the sentence previous? As she looked around for the person belonging to the voice, a little flustered when she cited no one. This is talking about her looking around, so I don't think we need a new paragraph here. Dorinda inquired. I don't know if they're going to have us put a new paragraph here when we have a new speaker because she's actually speaking. I don't think so, but we will need I know we need a new paragraph right here. Okay, new paragraph right here. Because after we are done speaking, we have a new speaker, the narrator, versus Dorinda, who is speaking. Groomed in courtly speech, she could talk like a princess when convenient. So that's our new paragraphs. Now let's look at our sentence openers. What kind of sentence opener is this? In this case, I don't think they actually labeled the sentence opener because it's a more advanced concept than what the students have been explained to. There is an invisible part of the sentence that is being a little flustered. So this is actually an invisible number 4 opener, an invisible ing participle opener. So if your student really wants to, they can label it as a number 4, but in the book, I don't think they label this one because it's more advanced. So let's go on. A little flustered when she cited no one, Dorinda inquired. All right, this is all part of the same thing, so we don't have another opener until here, which is groomed. Again, this is a being groomed in courtly speech. So we have another number 4 opener here. If I remember correctly, they explained this in the answer guide, but I don't think they are requiring you to put the number of the sentence openers here because, once again, advanced concept. All right, that is going to take care of our sentence openers. Now we're going to look for any other grammatical mistakes. Unlike the previous day, we don't have any choices between homonyms. So we are going to take a look to see if we can have anything else that needs to be fixed in this sentence. I don't think that there is. Okay, now let's do a split screen and see how well I did. So as you can see off to the side of the screen over here, this is what the answer guide is going to look like for you. And we can see that I already made my first mistake. We do indeed need a new paragraph here according to the book. Now, whenever you make a mistake, you need to ask yourself why. It does me no good to say, oh, I need to put this mark right here. What does the mark mean? Why does it go there? So let's go over to our answer guide and take a look. We indent because we have a new speaker. The second sentence can stay in the same paragraph because it directly relates back to the words that Dorinda just spoke. So in this case, we have a new speaker. They are saying that because we are speaking here, it's no longer the narrator, it is Dorinda who is speaking because it's all part of this one big sentence here. And that's why we need a new paragraph. Makes sense. New speaker. So let's take a look. Did we get everything else? We have our capitalization. You will notice that they did not have the number 4 up here, but that's okay. Adverbial clause, that is correct. We got the correct usage here. We have our subject and our verb correctly identified. The comma is correct. The main clause is correct. Our bracket is correct. Oop, I missed something, and this was just my negligence. I hope that you saw this, but Dorinda is a name and it needs to be capitalized. So we are going to mark that as needing to be capitalized. So Dorinda inquired, all right, subject, verb. All right, we are correct with our comma. Oh, and I forgot to add our quotations. I said that we had a speaker, but I did not put in our quotation marks. So let's put our quotation marks around where it needs to be. Very good. Okay, moving on. Pray tell. Oh, and I forgot, because we are starting a new speaker, I didn't capitalize there as well. So I need to capitalize the beginning of a quotation. Main clause, all right, I correctly said main clause, and tell, yes, tell is our verb, because pray is an interjection here, not a verb. It is an archaic, no longer used word meaning please or I beg you. Pray tell is an idiom meaning please tell me. And I was reading that, as you can see, straight from the answer book. Let's continue on. All right, I was correct that we did not have to capitalize this part, and main clause, that is correct. And we do have a subject, has tendered, that's our verb, such a thoughtful offer, question mark, and quotations. All right. Groomed in courtly speech. All right, once again, notice that they did not have a number 4 there, and they did not have a sentence open, a new paragraph there. Okay, so they say that this goes along with what was being said here, evidently. Groomed in courtly speech, comma, this is our introductory phrase set off from our main clause with a comma. Main clause, subject, verb, prepositional phrase. Yes, we are correct about that, comma. And yes, this is an adverbial clause. So this is the point where if you didn't know why this is what it is, even if you marked it correctly, now we go into the answer guide and we take a look. So let's take a look here. Let's take a look at some of our advanced issues. First of all, let's look at our underneath commas and punctuations. We're going to look at invisible number 4 ing openers. We're going to read, invisible number 4 ing openers take commas twice. The original is correct. A little flustered when she sighted no one, Dorinda inquired. And number 2, groomed in courtly speech, Dorinda could talk. So here's a teacher note, something that as a parent or co-teacher we might talk to our student about. Being is implied before both openers. The first also has an adverbial clause in the opener. So, as we have stated in a previous lesson, save the comma for the end of both openers, meaning in this case after no one. Let's go in and ask ourselves, why did we have this colon here? So we could read under advanced, let's read about that colon. Colons follow main clauses and set up an example, list, or explanation. The colon after pray tell is correct. It is a handy punctuation mark that effectively means see what follows. That is what it is meaning here. So it's bringing emphasis to what comes afterwards. Were there any other questions that we wanted here? All right, when convenient. In this case, when we want to read about when convenient, we have to go over to our grammar lovers section. I love these. So number 2, grammar lovers. The second clause, when clause, is another adverbial clause. It follows a noun but does not describe the noun. She is not when convenient princess, so it is an adverb and not an adjective clause. So I hope you are getting an idea of how a student might go through their work and how you could go through a student's work with them. What my advice is that the student does their best work on their own without the teacher's help. And then after they have done their best work, you, as the parent, sit down with them and go through the answer guide with them. Allow them to read through the answer guide with you if necessary, so that they can see the words and read them and see what the instruction is. The idea being is that we want the instruction to be as easy as possible. We want the student to see the right answer every time with Fix-It. We want them to see how it's supposed to work. But as a teacher, you need to make sure they're not just copying marks onto a paper. You need to inspire them to ask the question, why? And try to get them to understand what the marks mean. This is an example of a student's work that I got on lesson 8. So real student work here. You'll notice that this is normally what it will look like. And you'll notice that we also missed, just like this student missed, that we didn't do our vocabulary word, tendered. So normally the vocabulary word should go right here, tendered. And then we will write what the vocabulary word means, which in this case means offered formally. After the student has completed all 4 days of their worksheet, they will then do a copy assignment where they are going to copy out all of the correct work on a piece of paper like this. The normal way that we want them to do this is that it has to be double spaced in their best cursive work. If the student is unsure about what the fixes are to look like, there is a spot in the answer guide where it shows all the fixes as it's supposed to be written down in paragraph form. Now, I'm fully aware that many students and parents feel uncomfortable around grammar and have not yet discovered the joy of engaging in the workings of language. So let's go over some of the resources that are available to you. The first resource I want to show you is the student workbook. This is what it looks like in our PDF form that we try to make available to our co-teachers as well. The first thing I want you to take a look at is this page number 3, which gives you an introduction as to how they want the day and the work structured. And hopefully it's very similar to what I told you to do, but this is a good spot to read through if you have any questions about how you're supposed to do the work itself. Then for the next couple of sections from pages 4 to 69, you're going to have the different lessons and then the worksheets that go along with it. At the beginning, you will notice that there are some empty sections up here because they have not introduced all of the concepts yet. But each week, you'll have a new concept, which hopefully your teacher will go through with the students, but the students can always refer back to them. and each week they will add a new concept of some kind. Every once in a while, there will be a review day where there will be no new concept, but those will be later on the book usually. I mentioned earlier in the video the grammar cards. These are what the grammar cards look like. They are found on page 73 and going through 82. So if you want to print off these grammar cards for your student, they are here, they're available. They should print off onto double-sided paper because that's the way that they're meant to be printed off. After that, let's go up to page 87 here. Page 87 will give you a list of contents of the rest of the book. And this is really useful. If you as a teacher don't understand a concept, you can come to this page and normally you'll be able to find the concept someplace in here. And so I'll just be honest, if you can understand all of the grammar listed in this part right here, you are going to be better at grammar than most everyone else in American society. So read this section. I would highly advise it. A lot of good information here, very clearly explained. But one part that I want to point out in particular is going to be the stylistic techniques beginning on page 119. In my 6th grade class at Trinity, I print out this section because I think it's so valuable for the students to have available. Because these dress-ups are something that we are trying to incorporate into their writing, into their everyday speech, into every part of their grammar and writing. So this is important for the students to be able to know, and sometimes the teachers don't know what a dress-up is. And so here they can go and read about it. Each one of the dress-ups, I believe there should be 6 of them listed out here. And you can learn about your WDA Asia clauses and then the sentence openers. This is the second part that I really focus on in my 6th grade class. We have our dress-ups and our sentence openers. So what is a number 1 opener? Here you can come and you can read about it along with examples, which are very helpful. However, sometimes these might be more than what you actually need going through resources like this. So what we usually use is our teacher guide. I have provided for my parents the teacher guide broken out by the week. So here's an example of the first week. We have our lesson up here where we had our commas and our NDAs, and sometimes there'll be additional teacher notes off to the side which you can help with your students. And then we can go into day 1 and look at what it looks like and read through all of these different things. This is a great way for you as a teacher and even your student to learn. If by chance you aren't with your student has to do independent work for a week, this is something that your student can come and read through. Once again, I always advise that they do their best work on their own first before they look at the teacher guide. And when they do use the teacher guide, I want them to be understanding why they are doing what they're doing. So I want them to be not so much focused on this spot up here, but on the text and the information down here. Why is this an indentation? Why do we use capitalization? What are the homophones? Coordinating conjunctions, what are those? Looking at commas and other punctuations and other grammatical notes. And yes, learn to be a grammar lover and even read these over here. Introducing more advanced concepts to your student is a great way to prepare them for the next level of learning. They may not master or understand these grammar level concepts right away, but if they have been exposed to them before, the next level of grammar will be so much easier for them. Then at the end of every week, you have the student rewrite work. So this is their copy work where they are going to sit down and they're going to copy this onto their own notebook paper in a very clean, orderly, and beautiful way. But if you need something to double check their work against, here you have the complete work as it should appear in their notebooks. If that was a lot to take in, yes, it is. So for my class, I have made a checklist for them to try to help you and your student go through the work in an orderly fashion. So you will have this available in my 6th grade class where you can print it off, and each week you can go through and you can check off these as you have gone through each step. Hopefully this will help keep everyone on the same page and allow your students to know what they have finished and what they haven't finished, and give you an expectation as to what the student should be doing. So now that you've seen what we do, let me close with why we do it. As you can see, we try to keep Fix-It as student-led as possible. It is meant to model correct grammar for the student and build their subconscious pattern recognition of grammatical principles in a fun, story-based way. It builds into Trinity Academy's wider use of IEW curriculum as well. The stylistic techniques and vocabulary used to describe to them in their worksheets will be used in all of the students' writing assignments. It also provides the teacher with a markup language for corrections that should be familiar to the student. The Fix-It curriculum has a lot of resources available to the student, parent, and teachers when they get stuck. So I think it's a great resource for our at-home days when the students are working a lot by themselves and need those resources, and you as a co-teacher. It has lots of resources for you to go out and learn with your student. And when your student sees you learning, you know that they will learn along with you. We hope that this video was helpful. Let us know if you have any further questions.